ACL injuries are much more common in young girls than they are in boys. The age group that's most at risk are 14 to 18-year-olds. Those kids that are playing high school sports for the first time, that really haven't been that physically active, and they're going out there and really trying their best, but they're not moving really well. And so one of the things that we're really concerned about is, what do we do with these kids after they're injured? After they've had an ACL tear and they're reconstructed. Right now, the majority of what we do is just strengthen and get them back to moving sort of like they were before. But the goal really should be to move them back to a little bit better than they were. We know they weren't moving well, and we need to really rehab them. So one of the things we spend a lot of time working on with the clinicians is trying to understand the best way to objectively measure when somebody's ready to go back into sport. Right now, most of the return to sport criteria are based on time and time alone. So when you're 6 months or 9 months out from surgery, no matter what you're doing in terms of how you're moving or your strength metrics, they say you're ready to go back. The graft is healed. But as a result of that, we see that about 20 to 30% of kids that return to their previous level of sports activity end up with another tear, either a tear of their graft or of the other limb. The other ACL on the other side. So what we're trying to do is really get people to understand that we need to come up with some objective measures about how they move, not just strength and mobility, but really look at them during the activities that they do when they're on the field. And define what that is, so that when the parent says, well, why is my child not ready to go back? It's been 6 months since surgery. There's a number or a metric that they can hand out and say, they need to meet this baseline. Really thinking back to the years when you would take your child to the pediatrician and you had those movement milestones when they were able to walk and crawl and do all those other tasks. We're sort of saying there needs to be that same standard, in athletics and in sport, especially when we're talking about returning from an injury, specifically with ACLs, to make sure that these kids are ready to go back, and not just based on time and time alone. So what we always tell our parents when they come to see us in the lab is, before you let your child go back, make sure they see a therapist, make sure they see somebody that can really assess how they're moving, and then talk to your physician about whether or not they're really ready to go back, just to ensure that you're really giving them the best start back into sport and not putting them at risk for that second injury, within 6 months of going back.